a lot of us might remember one of our favorite games of all time. If you were around, you most likely had Pokemon Red version, Blue version, maybe even Yellow. And a lot of us can really just go back and just remember all the good times we had. We played with our friends, and it was one of the best times we could ever even think of and imagine. But on the other side of that, a lot of people also wanted to be competitive. They wanted to win tournaments and wanted to be the very best that no one ever was. I know I might say that as like, a pun or anything like that, but there were people that are out there, and I wanted to figure out if you were going to be competitive, what would be one of the Pokemon you would use on your team? And there were, the regular, maybe even favorites that people had that they liked from the show or anything like that. But most of the time, there were, to me, the four gods of the first generation. And today I want to talk to you guys about the first one. That one would be Gengar. Now, we all would know Gengar today as that Mega Evolution Pokemon that got banned into Ubers in Gen 6 and is insanely fast and powerful. Well, what if I told you back in Gen 1 he was a bit different? So let's just go back in time a little bit. I don't know if many remember if you did go to tournaments, but some of them were often held in your local Toys R Us's, Books A Million bookstores, comic book shops, wherever you might want to find them. It was pretty fun. I remember it being one of those with my brother. We played the card game too, and we also battled. And I didn't do so well because most of the time I didn't know what was going on. I was still very young at the time, but it was still fun. Uh, this is where you had to have your wired tournaments. None of this Wi-Fi BS you young kids are talking about today. And you can never even see the opponent's team back then either. It's like you just jumped in battle and, just hope whatever they had you just didn't like. And 9 times out of 10, everybody at least had a Gengar on their team. And that's what made him so important back then. It's just like everybody used him. He was one of the top Pokemon used back then. And he would be considered, I guess, the overused here, even back in Gen 1. And at least even the most used Pokemon, which was crazy. Even if you didn't even see a Gengar, you would see Alakazam, which would be his counterpart. But if we go into the game itself, he's the only fully evolved ghost type in Pokemon at the time. There are no other ghost type Pokemon that were fully evolved at that time. So he's like the most powerful ghost type Pokemon in the game. If you were going to be playing him, he was the best switch in you could do. If you were actually going to think about the game back then as you would today, you would consider him a good switch in because a lot of Pokemon back then were either normal or fighting types, like Snorlax's, Hitmonchan, Clefable, Chansey, those guys, Tauros. Yeah, I can go on and on about a lot of the normal type Pokemon. And he was a Ghost Poison. He was still that lovable little ghost guy we all know and love. If we remember also that there wasn't special defense and special attack; it was just considered special. And that was, pretty much like the special attack, special defense. And he had 130 base, which was quite a lot for a Pokemon like him, who also had 110 base speed. So we're just, this is his first stats that are given to him in the game. The only thing that really outsped him was Alakazam. And most of the time, people would just run Gengar and say because he had the Hypnosis, he would also be reliable, like I said, being a switch-in Pokemon. And you know what's really funny? What was common on him was Explosion. Just think about that for a minute. Would most people think about using Explosion? Not really, but yeah, it was common for him to use Explosion. And then for a very long time, Thunderbolt was his most, even more common move. Like, that was the move you had to have was Thunderbolt. Which is even weirder to think, because like, oh, where are all the ghost moves? The only ghost move back then he could have used was Lick, and that's a physical move that had 30 base power. So really, that one, no one really wanted to do that or really thought about that. He was still that guy who could just jump in, Hypnosis, put the guy to sleep, and just have fun with that. But it still had 60 base accuracy. Not a lot of people really felt safe with it sometimes. So There are also no really real poison type attacks too. So his actual uh, move set really wasn't anything far from being, ghost or poison. He could still run psychic, dream eater, um, and that's just how it was. So now we move to Gen 2. Uh, he gets new styles of play just from new moves that came in Gen 2, and a lot of Pokemon also come in the Gen 2. He still is one of the only evolved ghost types in the game. The only one that came after would be Miss Magus. So that was also crazy. Well, Miss Magus, I would have to go back. There were some Pokemon that there were other ghost type Pokemon. If you were to see a Gengar Gen 2, you would see he was one of the first spin blockers because he was a ghost type attacker and, rapid spin. Spikes, that became a very common move for most Pokemon, like Skarmory, as I've mentioned before. So he became one of the first spin blockers in the game, which was really cool to see how, types of play coming out just from new moves. It was also common to see Destiny Bond and Shadow Ball being introduced in the game, so that really helped out with his actual stuff. And Destiny Bond being a better one-for-one move than Explosion, because Destiny Bond wasn't in the first generation. And if you really need that one-for-one to outspeed and take out the opponent with you and get a two-for-one maybe after taking another Pokemon, yeah, Destiny Bond. And another funny, most common move you would not really expect, but not until you think about it, Dynamic Punch was the move that Gengars would run just because of seeing any kind of Tyranitar. And we all know and love that, crazy Godzilla Pokemon, and he was one of the most powerful Pokemon at the time, next to Gengar and many others I could always go on about. But if you really want to stop Tyranitars, you would have to run Dynamic Punch, because people in the competitive scene, they really had to, back then you had to think about what to stop. What were your threats? And no matter what, if it was a physical or a special move, you had to bring something to stop the threats. So he was now given any kind of more play styles. He was given Mean Look and Perish Song, so that became one of his first gimmick sets, I believe. And then as we keep going on, it's just harder to tell what he was going to be. Could he be that Perish Song Mean Look guy that would just trap you in, then you die eventually? Or could he be that all-out attacker that ran Thunderbolt, Dynamic Punch? He would even run Ice Punch for all of the grass types out there. It was really crazy what Gengar was running. He's not what we see with today about just being an all-out special attacker. He did run some physical attacks and other gimmicky little strategies there. Now, in Gen 3, did you ever think about seeing him in Gen 3? Funny thing was, he was unavailable in Ruby and Sapphire and couldn't make it into the game's compatibility, even in Emerald. Not until Fire Red and Leaf Green does he come back with an immediate vengeance. EV training nature's there now a thing, and become the best way to really optimize how much of a beast he is. He was now given the ability Levitate. If it wasn't already bad enough that he, couldn't get hit by normal fighting, which was still very prominent back then, now he can't get hit by a super effective move like Earthquake or any ground type attack. That was incredible. I want to know who actually thought about that at Game Freak to let that go through the checking there. I don't know. So, was it all worth it? I don't know. Another crazy thing they give him and they make is Will-O-Wisp. We all know what that move does. So, even now, just over the gens, he gets more and more powerful. You would think back in Gen 1, it's like, oh, he's too good. They shouldn't really do much to help him out. But you will see, no matter how far down the line we go, that Pokemon just gets better and better. And even to this day, it still does. And I'm not done yet. I still got a few more things to mention. So now that he could stop more physical threats and take more hits without really, needing to, he can learn Will-O-Wisp, still go fast. And another move that became common on him just a little bit was he could now have counter, which no one really saw, even see coming. No one was like, oh, that thing can't have counter, but it does. And so he was still a common special sweeper because he could still have the T-Bolt, he could still have Giga Drain, Shadow Ball, anything like that. But they would also start running Fire Punch because Caesar started becoming more powerful because of Platinum. I'm getting the Gen 4 now because you're going to want to know why. Now, Gen 4, things just get deadly. I'll try to close with this, but in this gen, he became considered Uber. He became one of the gods, and this is where I get to where I said he was the gods of the first generation. This is where everything comes full circle. Not only did Shadow Ball become more of a useful move, he got Sludge Bomb. Now, both of his typings have stab moves, which is scary because Sludge Bomb does a lot of damage. On top of that, Focus Blast became a move that was also born out of, someone's twisted mind. Energy Ball also became something. So now he's just done with physical attacks. You could still run that Fire Punch, yes, if you're really scared of Caesars, as I said before. But not really, you didn't need to, because Hidden Power was also something that came into the scene. You can run Hidden Power Ice for the Dragons, Hidden Power Fire for the Steel types. There was nothing that couldn't stop him. Wait, I'm not done still. He can also add on Life Orb. Now, items the better the items came out, like, you had Focus Sash, you had Life Orb, you had Choice Scarf. Now, everything just gets wrapped in. Before, it was just, whatever moves he had, and I guess his stats. But now we jump into items and abilities. We had Levitate, now we have Choice Scarf, Life Orb. If you had a Choice Scarf Gengar, no matter what they throw out at you, you could not stop. That's what it felt like. He had high special attack, high speed. What was that? What out there? Hypnosis got an accuracy boost up to 70% at a time, but they dropped that back down once else after Diamond and Pearl. Once Platinum came out, they dropped that. We might remember when Platinum did come out. We remember when Bullet Punch Caesar became a thing. He had Technician. That kind of stopped Gengar a little bit on the popularity charts because there was a lot of hype around Caesar. Everyone will run Caesar like, oh man, he gets Bullet Punch, he has Technician, Swords Dance and everything. He became an Uber too, but Gengar, even though he was a bit forgotten, he wasn't out. He could still take down anybody he really thought of throughout the rest of Gen 4 and 5. That it remained the same. And then, like I said, way back, even now to this day, Gen 6, getting a Mega Evolution made things even crazier because now he can have different strategies and just a lot of different ways. I don't really have to say anything about his Gen 6 dominance because we've already lived through that. I wanted to show you guys and tell you guys how things were back to before you're playing the game maybe. And there's a lot of things we will have to find out about other Pokemon. So as you guys can see, this is still part 1 of the Gods of the First Generation. I have 4 or 3 more Pokemon to get to. You guys will have to see those in the next coming weeks. So other than that, thank you for watching. It becomes very easy to believe one of the oldest Pokemon in the game can still wreck your shit.